smile crinkled his face again. Keely disentangled her own hand from her pack and gave his a quick shake. "I'm Keely Mitchell." "Are you going home to WA or visiting, Keely?" He said her name with a hint of brogue that reminded her of her Irish grandfather. "Oh, visiting," she replied, but the thought of escaping forever was momentarily intoxicating. "Have you been before?" "Only to Perth. When I was a child, my grandparents lived there." "You'll find it's changed since then. Are you planning on travelling further?" Keely hesitated. He asked a lot of questions. She wasn't good at confiding in strangers. "Yes. Perth is just the starting point. I plan to head north from there." "South is better." "Is it?" "We have everything in the south. Great wine, fantastic beaches, surf, beautiful weather and a magical river. What else does one need?" "Good morning, everyone, and welcome aboard." Keely was saved from answering as the flight attendant began the safety instructions. Keely gave the attendant her full attention, but the woman on her left continued to work on the crossword, and the man, Ewan, leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. Relieved that she would no longer have to make conversation, Keely watched the flight attendant closest to her, noting her nearest exit was a couple of rows in front. Had a domestic flight ever needed to use these emergency exits? Keely shook her head to chase away the negative thoughts. She was worrying like her mother. She recalled the quiet send-off she'd just experienced. Her mum had teared up, and her dad had given her an extra tight hug. They were behaving as if Keely was leaving Adelaide forever, instead of taking a 3-month trip to Western Australia. "I'll be home for Christmas," she'd said. Her dad had flapped a hand and pulled her mum close, while her 2 younger brothers had watched on with bemused looks. They'd complained when their mother insisted they come too. They'd lined up a tennis game with the girls next door and weren't keen to make the trek to the airport. "Goodness knows when you'll see your sister again," the mother had said. "We're all going to give her a proper send-off on her big adventure." Keely shook her head. Big adventure? What a laugh. It wasn't as if she was leaving the country. She had been saving to go overseas for a couple of years, but her mum hadn't wanted her to go alone. Keely's friend Beck had agreed to go with her, but when Beck had been offered a new job, their plans had been put on hold till the year after. Keely had been desperate to get away for a break and opted for a West Aussie trek as an alternative until they could reschedule the overseas trip. Broome and the Kimberley region had interested her since the time of her childhood holidays in Perth with her grandparents. Her grandfather had been an avid storyteller, keeping Keely and her younger brothers entertained with tales of his travels to the northwestern areas of Australia. She decided on a ramble along Australia's western coast. If she put the huge expanse of the Great Australian Bight in the Nullarbor Plain between her and her nightmare, maybe she could shake it off. The safety spiel finished, the flight attendants retreated, and the plane turned onto the runway, its engines at full throttle as it surged forward, forcing Keely back into her seat. She clasped her hands tightly and took a quick look out the window. The view was partially blocked by the woman next to her, but Keely was able to catch a glimpse of Adelaide sliding beneath and the shoreline giving way to the sparkling blue of the Gulf waters. "Perth, here I come," she muttered softly and turned away to look directly into Ewan's bemused smile. She blushed again. Had he overheard her? She dug her book from her pack and spent the first part of the flight reading, but gave up when the flight attendant offered food. It might help quell the queasiness in her stomach. It had been with her since the night before, and she assumed it was because of her anxiety in the lead-up to her travels. The woman with the crossword had packed her own food and continued to work on the huge word puzzle as she ate. Ewan, on the other hand, was keen to chat. "What were you reading?" he asked once their snacks and drinks had been delivered. "A book written by a doctor who has worked for the Flying Doctor Service in the top of Western Australia and Northern Territory." "Interesting?" "Very. I'm hoping to see some of the country he's talked about." "Are you in the medical profession, Keely?" There was that hint of Irish. The way he said her name reminded her of her grandfather again. "No, I'm a secondary teacher, art and design. I admire those who have the courage to teach, and you're creative as well, very clever." His eyes held a sparkle of amusement. Keely looked down. "I do enjoy designing and making." She reached for her